Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
One of the most striking features about this week's Torah portion is its name. Anybody know this week's Torah portion? What's its name? Yitro. I knew you were going to say Yitro. Why is this parasha of Revelation named after a Midianite priest? It is not named after Moshe, who is our greatest teacher. It is not named after a wonderful mountain, Mount Sinai. It is not named after clouds. It's not named after fire, the shofar that is blown. It is named Yitro. At first, it sounds curious, really, the apex of Jewish identity and history and destiny, the giving of the Torah, is associated with someone who is neither Israelite nor part of the covenant that is happening. Yet the Torah insists that we must encounter Yitro, Moses' father-in-law, not just as a marginal figure, but a central spiritual figure upon whom the entire parasha rests. The parasha begins, Yitro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, and so on. So Yitro arrives at the scene as someone who sees. He witnesses not just Moses' story, but the national journey of liberation. He listens, he rejoices, and praises God for Israel's redemption. In Yitro's rejoicing, he encounters an overlooking, we do all encounter, a spiritual act that we sometimes overlook, allyship. The capacity to honor someone else's liberation, even when it's not culturally ours. Allyship requires that we reflect on our privileges and ask how we can privilege them to help others. Yitro is a Midianite priest who can travel freely across borders, and as we can see later on, he has knowledge and experience of a more effective judicial system. He chooses to share these resources with Moses and his people, a newly forming nation. Above all, he is willing to publicly affirm and celebrate Israel's independence. And as a Midianite priest, he brings the weight of his people with him. Renowned clinical psychologist and scholar on race relations in America, Dr. Beverly Daniel Tatum writes about the role of witnessing in struggles against oppression. She explains that marginalized people need more than sympathy. They need witnesses. They need individuals who see their experiences, acknowledge their pain, and affirm their humanity. Yitro models this. As an outsider, he has Israel's suffering. He knows about Israel's suffering and rejoices at the end of their suffering. This is the profound solidarity, one that precedes the covenant. We often think liberation is achieved when the oppressed people proclaim freedom, but liberation becomes real when others recognize it. Yitro's next move is strategic, as we will read. He sits and observes as Moses mediates between his people, all the disputes amongst his people, morning to night, and he says, what you are doing is not good. You will certainly wear yourself out, and you will wear these people out. He encourages Moses to share leadership, creating courts of tens, of fifties, of hundreds, and thousands. This is a distributed leadership model grounded in trust, competence, and fear of God. This is not just organizational insight, it's theological. Judaism's tradition of shoftim, uzkenim, judges, and officials reflect the belief that holiness is not centralized, and communal responsibilities cannot rest on one person alone. Rabbi Dr. Eugene Borowitz, one of our leading theologians of the Reform movement, noted that Judaism views community as partnership between individuals and God, not just a one-man show. Of course. Yittro's counsel helps Moses enact this worldview. Empowerment of others is not a loss of authority, but fulfillment of purpose. Notice as well that Yittro's praise of God is very expansive. Blessed be the Lord who delivered you from Egyptians and from Pharaoh, he says. He does not say, blessed be your God. He blesses God, the universal source of justice and liberation. Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs describes Yittro's blessing as the first international recognition that Israel's destiny and implication beyond its liberation itself. Yitro recognizes that liberation, self-determination, is not a private matter. It's a public issue that should be affirmed. And it invites the whole world to see that justice is a universal good, not just a tribal undertaking. He reminds us that justice enlarges the moral imagination of everyone. Pursuing freedom changes not only our story, it changes how others imagine the possibility of justice in their own lives. After Yittro's arrival and counsel, the Israelites are now ready to stand at Mount Sinai and receive the Torah. All the people, Genesis says, all the people perceived the thunder and lightning and the sound of the horn. It is only after Yittro's recognition and Moses' restructured leadership and the people that are ready that God gives the Torah. All that the Lord has spoken we will do, and we will hear the people proclaim. Rabbi Abraham Joshua Heschel told that these festivals and the revelation are not merely historical facts or events. They are experiences that we must prepare to receive. Yitro is the one that prepares Israel to receive the revelation. They are experiences that we must prepare as he recommends, and also doing that, modeling rational readiness, external validation is important, internal restructuring is very important, and shared responsibility as well. So as we read this week's Torah portion, Parashat Yitro, and as we think of Yitro's name, I invite you, all of us, to think to ourselves, who has witnessed my journey and proclaimed my liberation? Where is in my life have I needed someone to see my struggle as real, my pain as valid, and my growth as meaningful? And to whom have I been that witness? In a time when many of us feel unseen, whether young people wrestling with identity, communities navigating division, hatred, or individuals striving just to grow, Yitro calls us to act as holy witnesses, as allies. Storyteller Brené Brown writes that true connection begins when we see each other's stories with compassion and celebrate one another's courage. And Yitro embodies exactly this: saying, hearing, rejoicing, and offering blessing that honors both struggle and triumph. Yitro enters our Torah in a moment of collective vulnerability and becomes the very first person who responds with empathy, with wisdom, and with vision. Our tradition does not name this Torah portion after Mount Sinai, or Moses, or clouds, or fire. Instead, it honors the one who saw, the one who affirmed, and the one who enabled our community to be ready for the covenant. This Shabbat, may we aspire to be Yitros, to witness the struggles of others, rejoicing in their growth, and help rebuild communities where responsibility is shared and justice a collective goal. May we continue to help one another to stand ready to receive the call of holiness. Shabbat Shalom.